people are joining us. So yes, very warm welcome to everyone joining us slowly. My name is Lisa Chamet. I'm Head of Partnerships at Charity Digital, and I'll be today's host. So very warm welcome, and very much looking forward to hearing from our two guests today for a very, very interesting conversation. Whilst people are still joining us, please feel free to introduce you in the chat and where you are joining us from today. I am personally joining from a very rainy Kent, so hopefully wherever you are, it's a little bit sunnier than down in Kent. But firstly, a quick intro to Charity Digital. We are a registered charity, and our mission is to help other charities and non-profits in the UK increase their impact by being more digital. We do this through two main activities. We provide access to the software products charities need at heavily discounted rates. And then we publish content like articles and videos, and we run webinars and any other events that educate charity professionals and volunteers on how to make better use of digital tools and technologies. So today our session will help us answer how can charities empower their organization and help teams use AI effectively and responsibly in the future. And more importantly, how do you communicate this with your senior leadership team and your board? It would be a fireside chat between Hakol, Chief AI Officer at Microsoft Tech for Social Impact EMEA, and Lev Malinin, Head of Enterprise Systems, Data and AI at the Salvation Army UK and Ireland. The session will equip you with the tools and strategies needed to effectively communicate the value of AI to your stakeholders. And our speakers will cover things such as, how AI can enhance your organization's impact and efficiencies, how to present AI concept to your board, and a framework to help you practice and refine your approach to building AI principles. So that sounds really exciting. Just before handing over to Ha and Lev, I just want to share a few house rules for those of you joining us for the first time or any regular. So the session is being recorded. We will upload it to watch on demand within a week's time. Any slides that are shared together with any other resources will also be made available. So don't worry if you've missed anything. Closed captions are available for today's sessions. So to enable these, at the bottom of the Zoom window, you can click on the up arrow button next to closed captions and then show subtitles. During the webinar, please ask plenty of questions in the Q&A section, which is located in the Zoom menu bar, and then Han Lev will address them at the end of the presentation. We also have some friendly member of the Microsoft team who can also help answer some of the questions. If someone asks a question that resonates with you, you can upvote it. You can just click on the thumbs up button. And finally, if you encounter any sound or image issue, just let us know in the chat section, and we'll do our very best to, to get the session back on track. Without further ado, very warm welcome to Ha and Lev. Handing over to you.
Thank you, Lisa. And hello, everybody. And thank you for making this time for this particular session. It is time that you are taking out of your day, so appreciate that. I hope that we can share some learnings, particularly with Lev here, to make your time worthwhile. And I always find that I learn from questions and interactions, and I'm really looking forward to the Q&A segment, so that I'd like to learn something back from yourselves as well. Please, can we run the poll? So I'll just talk a little bit into while you're doing the poll. It's been 2 years since ChatGPT come into the public domain, and every day, every week, there's some sort of development that is happening. Some of the very recent development is things like the UK government unveiled the AI investment of £14 billion and aim at ramping up AI adoption across the country, boosting economic growth, create jobs, and improve public services. The charity sectors have also been very proactive in the AI space. I have the privilege of being involved in some of that. And so, the sector has formed the Charity AI Task Force, which was announced last week by the CAST team and Zoe Amar. And this task force would champion the responsible, inclusive, and collaborative use of AI across the social sector. The AI EU Act, which phase one of which had just come into effect in February as well this month, and it aims to foster responsible AI in the EU. It's a little bit outside of UK, but it's close enough. And the reason I'm sharing all of these is because there's a lot of development, and it highlights the importance of AI in all of our work, particularly for this sector as a whole. So one of the things that we learn at Microsoft is that AI is not an IT thing, it's actually a business change journey. And so it is critical that we have the buy-in from the board and all of the stakeholders, inside and outside of your organizations. And so looking at the poll, whether you and your team are actively engaged in discussing AI with board and trustees, or whether you are, being asked to do so and about to start these kind of conversations, I hope that we can learn and share some, experiments today. So I'm really pleased and I'm very grateful that we have Lev here today. Lev has been on the AI journey at the Salvation Army UK from the start, and he is open to share his journey and his learning in from the Salvation Army. So welcome and thank you for your willingness to share.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Right. So first of all, we all know the Salvation Army, I hope. However, as I've been on this particular journey, I think to myself, oh, I've just learned something new. So I've asked Lev to just talk a little bit about the overview of the Salvation Army.
Yeah, sure. So I have been with Salvation Army for the last 5 years. Previously to that, I was at the British Red Cross, and for me, that step was almost stepping like from home to home. They were just probably about 5 years behind. So, in one sense, everything's familiar, the same finance systems, the same HR systems, the same issues with the data. However, having that experience, even though being 5 years behind, just meant that I felt like, oh, this is great. We know what we need to do. And that was my journey until obviously until today. And Salvation Army is both a global Christian church and charity. We operate in over 130 countries, supporting those in need. Here in the UK and Ireland, we make a real difference every day, providing 3,000 beds for people experiencing homelessness. We keep advocating for and protecting victims of modern slavery and delivering vital services such as emergency response, addiction recovery, employment support, and debt advice. Now, I'm used to working in organizations with such a vast array of different services, but there is one particular that will surprise you. We have a bank. I'm not talking about the food bank. We have those. I mean, a fully financially regulated banking license. So yeah, not many charities can say that.
So that was something new that I've learned, but actually the homelessness support is very close to my heart, and I'm delighted that to hear that the Salvation Army also cover that as well. So let's get into your AI journey then, Lev, please. Could you give us an overview of your AI journey? Why did you start? When did you start? And how did you go about doing that?
Yeah, sure. So we, just like most of charities, are facing two main challenges. First, continuous increase in demand for our services. And the second, how do we keep up with funding them? For us, AI wasn't about jumping in on a trend. It was about solving those real challenges. For example, a few years ago, we looked at replacing our donations platform. And after, obviously, the procurement process, an AI-driven platform was selected. And it predicted increased revenue without us having to change our processes. 6 months ago, we began on a Copilot journey, started with a group of 150 users to validate the impact. We received great feedback and proved value and return on investment. And now we initiated that second phase of the rollout to increase the number of users to 300. So today we have AI roadmap, including Copilot, as AI represents a shift, not just in how we work, but how we serve.
Right. So think big about how you serve, but start small, prove the value, and iterate and expand has been your approach. I have to say, I found that some organizations, they wait until there is an established strategy, policies, and roadmap. That is a sensible thing to do. But with AI, they also seem to struggle because it is difficult to do these things in the abstract. And where organizations actually, do the strategy policy for the long term and medium term, while also experimenting, feels like they are able to start with a degree of confidence and sureness that that seems to be fit AI better. So I know AI isn't just about Copilot, but let's make it real for our colleagues who are on this webinar. Let's use Copilot as an example to illustrate the approach that you've taken. So let's start with how you engage the board and all of the stakeholders. How do you go about asking them to prioritize budget and resource, which we know is precious? And I'm curious as to how you gain their buy-in to prioritize AI over, I'm sure, many other things that are equally important for the Salvation Army.
Yeah, sure. So we knew that Copilot adoption couldn't happen in isolation. Leadership buy-in was critical. We addressed the key concerns upfront, such as cost, security, governance, and ethical use. And that meant working with data protection, our Moral and Social Issues Council, and developing AI guardrails and AI policy. Well, I think it's important that this happened in parallel. So going to the board, I knew that the Big Bang approach, requesting millions to roll out Copilot for everyone, that wouldn't work, and it was unnecessary. Even then, the board had serious concerns. They heard about ChatGPT and the issues highlighted in the media. What if questions? What if sensitive data gets exposed? What if GDPR? What if it's biased and makes things up, like hallucinations? And finally, the big one, is AI going to replace people? And we simplified it. Instead of trying to sell Copilot, I framed it as a low AI experiment, and we assured the board that we are working within a security framework and an accredited partner to mitigate the risks.
Somebody just asked, what is Copilot? we are too close to it and we just neglect to explain what that is. It is the Microsoft Copilot is your digital assistant, and it can be used by every single employee in the organization to be more productive in their daily work as a whole. So here's a question. What gives you that confidence that you have obtained their full buy-in to do this thing? Because sometimes we go into these things and we find that just through whatever it is, we lose the buy-in.
Yeah, sure. So we explained that over 200 AI tools were already being used informally across the organization. This wasn't just about rolling out AI, it was about governing it responsibly. By highlighting this, we explained that we had to reach out across a wide range of teams and departments to give us a clearer picture. And of course, a comment from one of the board members, it's a no-brainer, helped us build the confidence that we were on the right track. However, only a few board members wanted to participate in the discovery phase, as most just wanted to ask their team members to be involved initially, as they kind of wanted to see the value, like what's in it for them.
Yeah. So it is important, isn't it? How did you go about explaining the technology? Asking a slightly leading question here, because I know you didn't. What is it that you explained, Lev, to the board?
So for us, the key wasn't about explaining the technology itself. It's about demonstrating that approach addressed not just the security risks, it's also addressing the risk of the unknown. We made it clear that AI isn't about replacing people, but about empowering them with better tools. And the answer: start small, ensure security, prove impact. And that's what we did with Copilot and a broader AI ecosystem. Today, AI isn't an experiment for us, it's an imperative. And just like a cloud-first approach, we are moving towards the AI-first strategy, ensuring that every digital tool we adopt is AI-powered to enhance and not replace the human impact.
Right. So I think I hear provide a compelling reason to govern AI responsibly is in order to do something now. I think I hear don't explain the tech, explain the underpinning reasons behind why you would do AI in the first place. Really address the key concerns upfront, particularly that concern about is it going to take my job away? I think we are all human, and that for me is a really important one. And then experiment overall, control the risk and address unknown risks that come about as well. Thank you for that. It's helped just to have these things very clearly articulated. What was the level of board awareness when you went into it and asked, we would like to do Copilot, please? Did you have to do much to build their awareness, or were they already pretty, aware?
So they were already thinking about it, as about a year ago, the Moral and Social Issues Council met to discuss the impact on our organization and how it is aligned with our values. Principles like boldness, compassion, and passion certainly made us want to understand it better. And we have established an AI working group, bringing together representatives across organization to collectively explore and collaborate on AI initiatives. This also indirectly engaged individual board members as their team members became AI champions, driving the awareness and advocacy from within. The board already had confidence in IT, largely because of the progress we made, across different areas, including data. Around 2 years ago, they made a strategic decision to advance our data capabilities to support the data-driven decision making, expecting it to take about 5 years. But as soon as we presented our data platform strategy built on Fabric and Power BI, we moved quickly. Within a year, we were up and running and ingesting data, delivering reports across HR, finance, property, fundraising. So when it came to AI, the board knew that we could trust us to implement it with the same level of rigor and impact.
So, I've done a lot of board briefing in the last couple of years, and although I don't have data points, I can certainly agree that the boards are very aware nowadays. And I think the poll that we had right earlier in terms of the number of colleagues who are already engaging the board just demonstrate that. I think what you have brought to the board is that additional clarity, that demystifying of what AI is and isn't, and provide a structured approach so that the risk is well controlled as a starting point. So here's another question. Heart is full of questions. And I think colleagues might be interested in that. So what kind of resources do you tap into to make your narrative confident and credible for the board? Could you give us some examples of that?
Yeah, sure. So we presented that the 150 licenses will enable us to broaden the spectrum of users and departments for comprehensive evaluation. And additionally, this qualified us for Microsoft funding, which will help cover the cost of a partner to guide us through the process, including the technical readiness assessment and training. Our internal M365 solutions team, they're responsible for maximizing the value out of the Microsoft 365 suite. So they were leading on that journey and managing the project, and they try to make sure that we can use the best tools and not just that we already have, and not just think that that we need to buy something else. Prime example is your Microsoft Forms. I saw the latest, the way it reports on the service, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. Yeah.
So for colleagues on the call right now, if you opt to go, the world is not Microsoft, right? Just all Microsoft. So if you opt to go with other toolings that fits your organization and environment and so on, I think it is worth tapping into those industry resources and vendor resources to help you with this particular journey. And effectively, this is what Lev has just articulated. So that's at the engaging at the board type level, but there are other stakeholders. So let's switch gear a little bit. How did you engage the end users during the pilot project? How did you approach it, and how did you gain their buy-in to participate? Because everybody is so busy nowadays.
Yeah. Well, the beauty of Copilot is its time to value. It's plug and play. The challenge lies in security, the data hygiene, and the user training. We began with 150 users across various departments: legal, finance, procurement, HR, IT, giving us a broad perspective of how Copilot could deliver the value across different roles. As we're already on a journey to mitigate, and to mitigate risks, and we are migrating the shared files to our SharePoint in Teams, the groundwork in addressing the data cleansing and security has paid off. Now, Copilot is just a tool, and like any tool, the true value depends on how well people are trained to use it. For us, the critical key piece was training. We knew that a one-size-fits-all approach wouldn't work, so we tailored training based on user personas. A fundraiser needs AI differently from IT analyst. A content creator needs different tools than a project manager. So we tailored the training sessions and the follow-up sessions to a similar groups. And Microsoft already has a blueprint, and we took advantage of it. It's called the Accelerated Adoption Program, and we work closely with a partner.
Okay, so again, for colleagues who are here, who are not necessarily adopting the Copilot, what the Accelerated Adoption Program is a framework and as well as a funding program. But if you look on to things like adoption at Microsoft.com, the approach there that covers critical success factors, that cover a leadership pillar, it covers the technology and security pillar, and then it covers the user adoption pillar. Those elements, that framework is equally applicable to anything that you want to be adopting. So it's worth looking at. So let's unpack the user adoption a little bit here, Lev, because I just know just from experience, and I'm sure you do as well, it is super important that we need to take the users on our journey so that they build a habit. Otherwise, it's just a waste of resource and money. So what approach did you do to maintain that initial momentum of end user adoption?
Yeah. So yeah, so there's two things probably that the first one is the what are the capabilities of AI, and the second is really and again, if it doesn't matter which area it is, the second is how you use it. So across any platform in terms of Gen AI, it's about being able to frame the prompts, as they're called, in the right way to give you what you need. As generally, if you're interacting with any Gen AI, you might say, "Oh, the answer is not what I wanted for." So and of course, like when we're boarding the users, we provide different levels of training, and they're based around those two, the capabilities and how it's done. So it's very easy to fall back on old routine. So to maintain that engagement, we didn't just train once and walk away. We created an ongoing channel for users. So the first training session is the onboarding of the Copilot, which demonstrates the Copilot capabilities, and which is again persona tailored. So we're talking about giving examples in people's specific jobs and roles that they do. And it's compulsory. So if you want to have a license, then you have to do that at least the first training, which then also tells them that the second training is the prompt creation training session. And again, the beauty of it is that, of course, it works for Copilot, but prompts obviously work across any Gen AI platform. And this is probably, I think, one of the best as you kind of really start to think about how to ask the question. And somebody said, it's a bit kind of like having to describe to a 6-year-old of what to do. And I think that kind of really makes sense as you kind of have to be, you don't have to be detailed, but you shouldn't just assume that it knows what you mean. It just giving those little prompts, it really gives very, very productive results. Then followed by the product specific sessions. So this is when we did like Word, Excel, web chat, etc., and all that, so that people really understood and Teams, of course. And then we had what we call regular Q&A drop-in sessions. So that's in people's calendars, and they could just drop in and if they kind of like they've got some ideas. And of course, we added everyone to what we call a center of excellence. It's a Teams channel where we post tips on useful prompts and upload the training material for everyone to access. And yeah, so like a regular communication there. We did send weekly emails with Copilot tips. So we took the Microsoft's great templates and we used these to send like a bite-sized practical advice as also a reminder. What worked really well is reporting to track on the adoption. So we monitored who was actively using Copilot and who wasn't. And we checked in with the users who hadn't engaged to understand any barriers they were facing and offered advice. And for those who didn't find use for Copilot, we took a pragmatic approach. We just reassigned them the licenses to a user who expressed interest and was on a waiting list.
Yeah, I did participate in a number of those kind of workshops, and the common theme for me was the level of interaction in between different people, not just to the person who run the workshop, but actually you see that whole interaction in between different colleagues where they're asking themselves, how would this particular scenario be applicable in this situation? And I find that quite interesting, that whole learning with each other rather than from a trainer to participants. And this is what we find overall in terms of this digital assistant called Copilot. You do need to exercise it on a regular basis in order to build the habit. And we have this research called 11 by 11 tipping point. And if you are interested, then go have a look. But essentially, it become a habit if end users get 11 minutes of time saving a day over a period of 11 weeks. And again, every one of us is so very busy nowadays. And so being able to make small gains help us invest a little bit more time each day so that eventually it become a habit in terms of using this new AI tooling. You have done a lot. You rattle through a whole set of things. What advice would you give other charities to get this first hurdle, get over this first hurdle?
I think every organization is different, and AI adoption isn't one size fits all. It depends on where you are in your digital journey. But the key to getting over the first step hurdle is realizing that AI is likely already in your organization, whether you've officially introduced it or not. I'd start by asking how many AI tools are already being used across your network. And you might be surprised. The BBC recently published a report showing that a high portion of employees are using AI without approval. The shadow IT is back, and it's happening everywhere. The best way to start for us, start small, learn fast, and let the results drive the next steps.
Yeah. So I can't emphasize enough here that whether you use Microsoft tooling called Copilot or you use another tooling, is worth saying that adoption by the end users is key. We have to get the end user to understand what's in it for me, and so that they would build a habit. And this is exactly what you've done. again, let's switch gear a little bit more. Now that you have initial success with 150 users with Copilot, can you share a bit about how you engage other department heads, other departments, and the additional users? How do you approach this?
Yeah. So once the pilot proved its value, expanding adoption became a natural next step. One of the clearest indicators was that users didn't want to give up their Copilot licenses. Measuring return on investment was straightforward. On average, Copilot saves around 2 hours per week per user, and that's about a day worth of extra work per month. For £24, I think it's a bargain. So, yeah, and beyond the numbers, we uncovered softer benefits, reduced stress, and better communication. The demand started to build up organically. As word of mouth spread across teams, we created a waiting list for the next phase of the rollout.
Right. Yeah. So again, Lev is very enthusiastic about Copilot because you've touched and feel and see the benefits. But for colleagues, on the call, if I completely understand, your situation may well be very, very different. So of course, do what is right for your charity. It's an obvious thing. I just want to emphasize that. And the benefit that you see, whatever tooling that you adopt may be different to what the Salvation Army see. But the thing is it is very difficult to start on the AI journey in the abstract. And so my suggestion would be it really is worth considering adopting something and have a slight bias for action, and of course on balance risk and so on and so forth, and actually measuring your benefits as well. What have you learned yourself in engaging with the board and with users and with departments on this particular journey, Lev?
Because we only fully engaged with a subset of each department, we gained a deep insight into how different teams worked, where they struggled, and opportunities to help them as IT, not just with AI Copilot. This gave us a clearer understanding of how we could help even more users in the next phase. And that created that natural demand, because instead of forcing AI adoption, we gave teams a reason to ask, like, when can we be part of this?
Okay.
And I think this has been one of the most exciting IT projects we worked on, because unlike many IT initiatives where security concerns lead to restricting or removing capabilities, this was about empowering users, giving them tools to work smarter, not harder. Another key learning was how much we discovered about, that each department, that knowledge has allowed us to think beyond. And now we're considering this new AI-driven solutions, including Copilot agents that are tailored to different functions across the organization.
Okay. So switch gear a bit more. You just mentioned the whole, restricting, removing capabilities because of security our concerns and so on. Let's talk about responsible AI or trustworthy AI, and let's get, to some of those significant concerns from everybody, not just board members, but end users as well. Could you summarize how you approach the whole question of governance, ethics, and security?
Oh, that's a great question.
Summarize that for us.
Sweating now, huh?
So we talk about security, we talk
Yeah,
about
so
ethics, and then we talk about governance.
so for security, as I mentioned earlier, we were already on the right track. Our data governance and access controls were relatively well established, and we relied on co-pilots to inherit the existing security model, which it does, of course, quite well. So for ethics, our Moral and Social Issues Council has taken the lead in developing AI guardrails. These are not the do's and don'ts. It's more how we should approach when we use any kind of AI tools that align with our organizational values and ethical principles, and of course, our social mission. And as for the governments, the reality is that we recognized, like early on, that AI governance isn't just an IT responsibility. We have an AI working group that's developing AI policy, defining how we approach that responsible AI use.
Okay. Yes. So we talk an awful lot about a whole range of things, engaging the board, engaging the end users, engaging the departments, and then responsible AIs and so on. Would you summarize the key takeaways for us in terms of this particular project that for yourself and for the Salvation Army?
Yeah. I would say don't think of all or nothing. You don't have to propose to get the full, or what people refer to, the expensive licenses for everybody. At the same time, the scope has to be meaningful, so that having a handful of licenses would limit the reach and the actual, that potential. Getting that initial leadership buy-in for us meant that we had a wide support and interest. The board was right to be cautious. The key to gaining that board confidence was to present it as we have assessed their concerns for security, that governance, the ethics, and are we embracing that opportunity for innovation and by running this pilot. And I think one of the biggest lessons we learned is that changing user behavior takes time. It's not something you achieve within one training session. AI adoption is a journey, not an event, and it requires ongoing reinforcement and that continuous learning and a real world application for users to fully embrace it. Another key takeaway, you don't have to figure everything out yourself. Microsoft has already addressed many of the big things, and questions around AI, the security, the adoption, your governance. Instead of reinventing the wheel, we leveraged just existing best practices, the adoption framework, you mentioned, and that security assurance to make our rollout smoother. And success isn't about how many licenses you deploy, it's whether you've captured the right users. Instead of like a blanket rollout, we focused on targeting personas where AI had the most immediate impact, ensuring that adoption is driven by that value, not their availability. And of course, the key to long-term AI success is being strategic, that continuous support and learning from that ecosystem around you. AI isn't just a tool, it's a shift in how people work, and that change takes time, and that iteration, and that right foundation.
Yeah. So here's a question. Now that
I'm all
you
out,
made,
huh?
Not allowed. Now that you made some, yes, big step, do you have any reflection on what you would have done differently?
That's a tough one. I'm not sure I would have changed much. We've learned incrementally at each step. So, and every challenge along the way has given us like value for insight, and that shaped our approach. If we had taken a different path, we might have missed some of those critical learning moments. That said, if there's one thing to reflect on, I'd say demand grew faster than I expected. While our targeted proof of concept was right approach, I saw how quickly that excitement and adding users became engaged, and they wanted access to it.
Yeah. I have to say, from a framework type point of view, we adopt the same framework internally, and we learn from engaging with customers, and all of the organizations as well. I think if you all know me, you will know I keep saying we learn all the time, and so this thing doesn't stay constant. One last thing, Lev. What next for yourself, for the Salvation Army?
Oh, yeah. So we literally just came off this morning. We're looking at replacements of our, for example, our service desk system, and talking to some of the vendors. And we straight away say, AI first approach. We want to understand each process and make, question, can AI help us here? It doesn't have to replace that process. We just have to ask those questions. Again, going bigger, like one of the advantages is that we do have E3 licenses, and that gives us Copilot chat. So we have about 7,000 users. So we're looking to do that prompt training across the board, across like everyone that might be interested in that.
So sorry to interrupt you. When we talk about E3, just for our colleagues on the call, we are talking about all of the users with the Office suite. So your email, your Word, your PowerPoint, your Teams call, and so on. And you have 7,000 users who have that kind of license. And within that, there's a thing called Copilot Chat, and that is already included, so you don't pay anymore. And that's what you're looking to widen it out, so that to give that inclusion to the rest of the organization.
And it's part of that M365 maximizing that value out of what we have without having to pay it. Obviously, we are beginning to work on Copilot agents, and these are the independent AI, sort of call it assistants that can look at the different workflows or look at the processes that you have. And one of the thoughts that we just recently had is we have a lot of shared mailboxes. So what we'd like to do is to get like AI to give us some statistics in terms of how well that people are replying to it, because we don't want to deploy them to full systems, but also maybe help them with some basic answers and questions, or gaining a bit more detail in from the queries that the departments receive. We have Microsoft, our data platform. It is based on Fabric and Power BI. Right now that ingestion of data is increasing, and we're looking at overlaying it with AI to present, to make the data available to those that need it, but still following the correct, of course, security framework to make sure that people get the right access to the data, so that we can, the long-term vision is to break the data hoarder barriers. So, and AI and Fabric, the data platform is helping us with that. We are, again, just on a journey to replace our fundraising system. and that system, the same is that every process we're going to ask about how can AI potentially assist or help us in that CRM.
All right. So
Well, I
there's a
think there's
lot.
more, but that's all I can think of right now.
There is a lot going on and coming forward as well, and by gaining confidence and gaining a way of working, you are now on a particular journey that is really exciting. Thank you for that. Really appreciate you making the time and be open for certainly for me to learn, having even though I've been on this journey with you, each time I hear it, I kind of, oh, there's something new here. So that's rather interesting as well. We now open for questions and answer. So
Brilliant. Thank you very much, both Han and Lev. It's been really, really interesting, and yes, I have to say we've had loads of questions, so we'll do our very best to go through as many as possible. But don't worry, we'll end at 2, but don't worry, we will send all the questions to Lev and Ha, and then they can take the time to answer them separately. We'll upload them in the resources tab as well. So without further ado, I'll dive straight in. A question for Lev. What training have you provided for those 150, 300 people and these personas? Can you tell us a bit more?
Yeah, so the the first set is what we call the mandatory training, is the one that gives you overall the capabilities of that of Copilot. The second one, which is training, it's almost like how to ask the right question, or how to ask the question in the right way is probably better put. And of course, the follow-up sessions and giving them examples. It's not like they have to think of everything. They can just go to a place and get that. And one of the biggest successes is our secretarial team, where they had to produce the notes in a certain way. So we created that copy and paste prompt that generates exactly what they need and puts it straight into the document that's filed after the meetings, and that reduced them huge amounts of time that they had to do that every day. So they certainly, considering they're reporting to the leadership, there's no way I can even take away that license, even if I wanted to.
Brilliant, thank you. And perhaps a question perhaps more for you, Ha. How can we ensure data security with AI models, especially when data can be held on different servers in countries outside of the EU, and the legislation around AI is changing all the time? So do you have perhaps a few pointers on ensuring data security?
oh, that is a big area, but I'll try and answer it. So in a few different ways. So within Lev talk a lot about data security and so on, and there are tooling that we Microsoft provide to make sure that only the people who have access can access it, and there are multiple different ways of how you could go about that. There's also tooling to allow you to start small. If you imagine, the whole body of data in an organization, the risk of just open it wide is can be a little bit overwhelming. So you can contain it to a particular set initially, and then you fix your data security and so on, and then you widen it out. That's it. That is definitely an approach. And you heard Lev talk about don't take the approach of all or nothing, is exactly that. There is always going to be the responsibility for the end users as well. The responsibility is all up and down the stack. When we talk about data residency and so on, we do support data residency in terms of the Office suite in general, and Copilot sits on top of that. There are still some gaps and so on, but we do support that, and these things will continue to grow over time as well. Yeah, and you see those certification in terms of compliance and so on. We work very hard to be compliant as soon as we can, and we're transparent about where we are compliant and where we are still on the particular journey.
Super. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Ha. A question for Lev, and that touches upon the donation platform you use. So I have a few questions here around the AI features of the donation tool, if you currently have one, and whether this has supported increased donations. So if you can tell a bit more about the donation platform aspect.
Yeah, so traditional, or what we had before was if you wanted to donate, you go in and you could be presented with a screen that you could be sort of deciding of, well, we used to calculate how much money should we prompt to ask a user. Now, whereas the AI platform that we're saying is that takes into account various let's call it like pieces of information as you land on that page. That could be whether you're using an iPhone, whether you could be using a PC or an Android, and more or less location you're in, etc. And those prompts for how much money you're going to ask is then calculated around that way. So, if I'm in Mayfair and I'm there on my iPhone sitting in my Bentley, it might say, "Hey, do you want to donate £25 and or £300?" These different ones, and then yet by using another device, what it thinks in a different location, it might say, for example, would you want to start with £2 or £5, leading up to £25? And the reason that's really important is because the people that's looking to donate is that they need to feel important, because if you have more, somebody's asking you for less, you miss that opportunity. And at the same time, if you don't have so much, it's not nice to ask for more than that. So
gotcha. Thank you. That's very interesting. So using different data points and linking them back to your existing data to sort of create these recommendations. Brilliant. Thank you. And moving on to another question, and perhaps one more for her. Some of our attendees are perhaps from smaller organizations. So how would you say smaller charities can go about accessing help and support to, explain security risk or the unknown, and finally embed safely AI? Do you have a few pointers for these smaller organizations?
Yeah, we did say that we will talk about a bit about the framework. So what you see in the screen, the AI governance framework, start to give you some of that in forms that are vendor independent, and you see some examples from different vendors in there. It is targeted at smaller charities, so please do have a look at that. And then if you go on to adoption@microsoft.com, and you might have to navigate a little bit, but it does get into how you might manage security, privacy, and compliance. And the key thing here is it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be completely perfect before you adopt some things here. Lastly, if you are already using the Microsoft Office suite, in all likelihood, you would have had the Copilot chat. That is free for you, and that have less interaction with your document, your team site, your emails, and so on and so forth. It's a really good starting point, both from the financial point of view as well as from the risk point of view. I would suggest start there, and again, have a little bit of a bias for action, and then we learn and grow together.
Super. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, both. That's all we're going to have time for today. Please don't worry if we haven't answered your questions. Hai and Lev will be share these, and we'll definitely have time to answer these questions, because we're perfectly aware that our precious guests also have have quite a busy afternoon. But thank you very much to you both. It's been a really, really interesting conversation. I hope you joining us have also learned quite a lot and have a few takeaways as well to apply within your organization. So thank you very much to you both.
Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And just before we wrap up for 2 p.m. Thank you again for attending today's webinar. Our next webinar will be next week on Thursday, 27th of February, and will be on shortening your charities reporting cycle. So a very finance-oriented topic for next week. Finally, we will put the feedback link in the chat. So if you could share, how you enjoyed the session today with us, that'll be fantastic. And then we'll also share the link in the email if you don't have time and have to drop off. As always, that has been recorded, and we will share all the slides and other resources with everyone who signed up and attended today. So thank you very much once again, and we hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you, Hai and Lev.
All right.
Thank you.